What is up, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of The Danny Show. I'm your host, Daniel Cody, and this is where I give commentary and reviews on all things wrestling. Thank you guys so much for joining. Before I get started with the reason I'm here, let me just give a quick thought about last night. Last night, I did not catch all of AEW, but I did catch all of the highlights, rather, from NXT, which was highlighted by such as John Cena, LA Knight, Asuka, and of course, this great man right here, The Undertaker, standing tall with Carmelo Hayes after teaching Braun Breaker a lesson or two about who's the toughest, or the baddest, rather. Now, that being said, AEW was headlined by this man, Edge. But I will say this, it was awesome. But apparently, there was some sport thing that's supposed to go on today, which is why they had it on Tuesday. Happy belated birthday, Mr. TK. But no wars, please. Let's not have any more wars. The last time wrestling had wars, we lost a we put a company out of business, and we don't need to do that. We need everybody to do as well, and etc. But that being said, last night was great. Let's get into the reason why we're here. Today is the day of the eradicator, the innovator of her brutality, and the man that and the woman that everyone calls mommy. Today is the day of Rhea Bloody Ripley. And in honor of today being her birthday, along with a lot of other great birthdays, including Taz, Beat Me If You Can, Survive If I Let You. You got him, Ricochet, and also the late great Dusty Rhodes would have celebrated his birthday today. But let's get into Rhea Ripley. We start at number 10. We have Rhea Ripley at the Survivor Series of 2019. It was a triple threat Survivor Series traditional match. Fun fact, this took place in the same city where Survivor Series will host this year, Chicago, Illinois. And what are the odds we will see CM Punk appear at Chicago? Will WWE be happy? I don't know. But in any event, moving forward, in this event, Rhea Ripley led the team of NXT against the women's Raw team and SmackDown team, with Candice LeRae and Io Sky, who was in a match the prior night at War Games, getting hurt. They were excluded from the event because of injuries. However, it led to Rhea, Timeless Tony, as she is known now with her dramatic films, and Bianca Belair would be forced to take it on and hold it down. And of course, unfortunately for them, Bianca and Tony Storm would eventually be eliminated, leaving Rhea Ripley against a bit of some odds. But despite that, Rhea would go on to take out Natalya and eliminate the boss, Sasha Banks, now known as Monet. And this is after Io and Candice LeRae came back to make their presence known. Rhea Ripley would win the match and win it for what would be a great night for NXT. Speaking of Bianca Belair, that leads me to the next match. At number 9, we have Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair at an amazing pay-per-view at NXT TakeOver Portland 2020 before the pandemic started. And this was great. Rhea Ripley overcame Bianca's strength and athleticism to eventually go for the Riptide and win the match with her strange pinfall that she's known for, the naughty pinfall, as we like to call it. Unfortunately for her, she didn't celebrate well because she would eventually end up being attacked by the number one contender who won the Royal Rumble that year, Charlotte Flair. Keep her in mind because I will be speaking of her later. Next at number 8, we have Rhea Ripley versus Natalia as Rhea defends her women's championship, her world heavyweight women's championship against Natalia on an episode of Raw, July the 3rd of this year. We saw a lot of on screen heat between these two that would drive Natalia to attack Rhea Ripley from behind and give a very competitive match on this episode of Monday Night Raw. Natalia would bring in her famous sharpshooter, but Rhea would eventually survive that and, of course, go for the Riptide and that naughty pinfall that she loves to perform and win the match and retain her Women's World Championship. Next at number 7, we have Rhea Ripley versus Raquel on an episode of NXT Halloween Havoc back in 2020 on an episode of NXT at October the 28th. Now, we know that these two have been having battles in recent years, but this was also a great match. This was about competition. Unlike now, this wasn't about championships. It was just the spirit of competition. Both women, were the tallest and the strongest, no pun intended to Bianca, of NXT at that time because Bianca was not on NXT. She was not. Those two were the strongest of that time. And this was the spirit of competition. And it would be a match that Rhea Ripley would win. But fun fact, both Raquel and Rhea Ripley are known to do the naughty pinfall because obviously we see Rhea do it, but from time to time, Raquel would do the pinfall as well. So this match would be built, or this rivalry for now would be built as the masters. Who is the master of the naughty pinfall? Now let's move on and stop talking about naughty pinfalls. Okay, at number 6, we have Rhea Ripley versus Asuka, the Empress of Tomorrow, at WrestleMania 37, Night 2. On this night, after a very competitive match, Rhea Ripley would go on to win her first Raw Women's Championship. Now, this was also a much needed victory for her at WrestleMania because the WrestleMania prior was not very good to her in Florida. But this time, also in Florida, Rhea Ripley would get redemption, winning her first Raw Women's Championship, already being an NXT champion. Now, also had a special entrance performed for her during her This Is My Brutality theme. And this was way before the Gothic era started, with the hair I'm speaking of. Now, moving on to number 5, we have WWE NXT UK Women's Championship match. We have Rhea Ripley versus Timeless Toni Storm. This NXT match took place at NXT UK Takeover Blackpool, the first of 2 Blackpool events that happened. But this was Blackpool 1, and it was for the NXT UK Women's Championship. Rhea Ripley was the champion at that time. However, unfortunately for Rhea Ripley, she would come up short, losing the title to Timeless Toni Storm, and before she was Timeless Toni Storm, by the way, but she would lose it to her. Unfortunately, though she lost that match, she would get redemption a year later, winning and defending her NXT American Championship against Timeless Toni at NXT TakeOver Worlds Collide. As NXT TakeOver US, Rhea Ripley representing US, defeated Timeless Toni Storm. However, this match at NXT TakeOver Blackpool was a great match also, despite it being a losing effort. But Rhea got her redemption at Worlds Collide 2020. Something good came to her in 2020. Now, moving forward, speaking of good coming to her, at number 4, we have Rhea Ripley versus Shayna Baszler, the Queen of Spades, on an episode of NXT on December 18th, 2019. This was a match where Rhea and Shayna had been building up, and one of the build up stops was War Games. However, this match was the main event of NXT, and wasn't the first time women main evented NXT to my knowledge, but this match right here main evented NXT, and it would be a match where it took a super riptide from the second rope to win the match, and Rhea would celebrate with fans, and the fans would fill the ring as Rhea was hoisted in midair as everyone chanted NXT on one of the great endings of an episode of NXT. Besides the NXT of last night, that was also the top end of NXT, in my personal opinion. Moving forward to number 8, and this was 3. This was her first NXT win, by the way. Women's Championship win. At number 3, we have Rhea Ripley winning NXT War Games 2019. What makes this match, obviously, War Games is very special. This was the first ever women's War Games, and it did not disappoint at all. However, there were a lot of shocking moments that happened. We found out that Mia Yim, who was supposed to be a part of the match, was mysteriously attacked, which left a new partner, which would be Dakota Kai, standing next to her best friend, Lady Kane, Tegan Knox, who was also a part. So the team consisted of Lady Kane, Dakota Kai, Candice LeRae, and Rhea Ripley. However, there was a bit of a plot twist because it was actually Dakota Kai who was responsible for the attack, and she would show it when she gave a shocking attack to her best friend on screen, Lady Kane, Tegan Knox, leaving Rhea Ripley and Candice LeRae at a disadvantage, a 2-on-4 disadvantage. They had to go up against Shayna, Bianca Belair, Io Sky, and now known as Alba Fire. And it seemed like the other team, Shayna's team, was going to win, but somehow, after Shayna got cuffed to Rhea, Rhea found a way to get the job done, and Candice, as well as Rhea, stood together as Rhea got the pin for the team and won the match with a disadvantage. At number 2, we have Rhea Ripley winning the Royal Rumble this year. The reason this match is on this list is because Rhea was the only woman to go from coast to coast, starting at number 1 and going the whole distance and winning the match. She started with Liv Morgan. Fun fact, she started with Liv Morgan, and if I'm not mistaken, it was those two being the last two standing along with Asuka. But in the end, it was Rhea Ripley who would start and win the match, surviving all 29 other women. Which brings us to number 1. Our next match, our last match on this list at number 1 is Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair at this year's WrestleMania 39 Night 1. And this was a redemption match for Rhea Ripley. Because Rhea Ripley won the Royal Rumble from 1 and went all the way to the end victoriously, the only woman to do that, Sasha lasted, but Rhea won. Because of this, Rhea got to choose who she wanted to face, and obviously she had to choose Charlotte Flair. Because, fun fact, two facts to this. The last time they faced off at WrestleMania, Rhea Ripley tapped out, losing the NXT Championship. And then let's talk about the last time they faced off one-on-one. To my knowledge, Money in the Bank 2021. Rhea Ripley tapped out and Charlotte Flair became the Raw Women's Champion. So, every time Rhea has met Charlotte for a championship, Rhea has tapped out and lost a championship. So, this was a huge moment of redemption for Rhea Ripley, and she would go on to achieve that and win the SmackDown Women's Championship from the Queen Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania. Now I gotta ask this. What is it with women smiling in defeats? I don't get that. Sasha smiled after she lost to Bianca at WrestleMania 2 years prior. 24 hours earlier that day, that Saturday, Roxanne Perez defended her women's championship, lost it to Indy, and Roxanne was seen smiling. What is it with women smiling in defeat? But nonetheless, Rhea Ripley gets her redemption in this great, awesome classic, 4.75 star classic, and becomes a Grand Slam Women's Champion, winning the NXT Championship. The NXT, if I'm not mistaken, didn't she win the NXT Women's Tag Team Championships? I think she did. But I know she has won all single women's championship from NXT, Raw, and SmackDown, and is now Women's World Champion. So happy birthday to Rhea Bloody Ripley. Just don't have Simp19 Dom singing happy birthday to Rhea Ripley, because I'm telling you right now, if we sing happy birthday to Rhea, don't have him do the honors or the crowd will boo him out of the arena, which I really enjoy doing. But happy birthday, Rhea Ripley. And that's all the time I have for you today, and I'll be back with another review on all things wrestling. See you guys next time.